Summary of Captain Corelli'S Mandolin by Louis de Bernières. Dr. Ioannis, a Greek doctor, wants to write a fair account of his home island, Cephalonia. But he can't do that without getting angry about all the times the Greeks took over, so he changes the name of his book to A Personal History of Cephalonia. In the town, Pelagia, his daughter, falls in love with Mandolin, a young fisherman. In August, on the feast day of Saint Gerasimos, they get engaged, but Pelagia is sad about it. Dr. Ioannis won't give a dowry, says Mandolin isn't smart enough to understand Pelagia, and says they shouldn't get married until after the war. Most of the time, Dr. Ioannis hangs out at the capitaine with his royalist friend Stamatis and his communist friend Corelli'S. Even though they used to fight over politics, now that the war is getting closer to Greece, the three of them work together to protect their country. Dr. Ioannis also takes in a pine marten, which Lamoni's child calls Cypsina. In 1940, Mussolini is getting ready to attack Greece. He makes up border events and, in August, he sinks a Greek ship with a torpedo. In the autumn, he sends his representative, Grazi, to Greece's Prime Minister, Metaxas, with an order. Metaxas doesn't want the Italians to come in, but they come in anyway. Mandolin goes to join the war effort, and Dr. Ioannis gives Pelagia a gun to protect herself. Carlo, an Italian army man who is gay, starts to tell his story. He joins the army to find love, and he does. Francisco, who is married, becomes his best friend and the person Carlo falls in love with without knowing it. Even though they are communists and don't like the idea of rebuilding the Roman Empire, they do what they are told and blow up a Greek watchtower. They find out that the task was really a plan to invade Greece. In the winter of that year, their group goes to Greece. The Italians march in the cold and rain for months while Greek troops kill them at their own pace. Francisco goes crazy from being alone and hungry, and then he kills himself. He dies in Carlo's arms, and Carlo shoots himself in the thigh to leave Greece. Later, he goes to see Francisco's mother and tells her that Francisco died quietly and for a good reason. Pelagia starts to write letters to Mandolin, but he never answers. She starts making a bed cover and a vest, but she has trouble crocheting because her mother died before she could learn how to do any of these things. Dr. Ioannis sees this and tries to distract Pelagia from her sadness in any way he can. It works, and when a skeleton, smelly, and almost unrecognizable Mandolin shows up in her kitchen, she doesn't recognize him. She goes and gets Mandolin's mother, Drusilla, and the two of them take care of all of Mandolin's problems. This makes Pelagia realize that she wants to be a doctor. Mandolin knows that Pelagia doesn't like him, so he wants to go back to the front to do something that will make her happy. He seems crazy to Pelagia, but on the day the Italians come, he goes back to normal. As they march through the streets, the Italians make fun of Hitler, and some of them seem to be communists, which surprises Corelli'S. Carlo is a few weeks later than the other Italians in getting to Cephalonia. Even though he is still sad about Francisco, he falls in love with Captain Corelli very quickly. Corelli is in charge of an opera group called La Scala, which sings on the toilet, and as soon as he hears Carlo sing, he drafts him. Soon, the Italians plan to put their officers in homes with Greeks from the area. Dr. Ioannis makes a deal with a quartermaster to house an officer in exchange for medical supplies, so Corelli comes that night. Dr. Ioannis and Pelagia do everything they can to make Corelli feel bad about invading Greece. For example, they tell him that Cypsina is a Greek cat. Corelli feels like a fool when Cypsina bites him. The next day, Carlo meets the Greek strongman Belisarios, and Corelli and Lamoni become friends. Later, Mandolin calls Pelagia to tell her that he is going to join the rebels. He puts her down and makes fun of the jacket she made for him, but he says he loves her. Later, Corelli sees the coat and offers to buy it, saying it's beautiful. Corelli starts playing the mandolin for Pelagia, and the two of them talk about what they want to do after the war. Corelli wants to be a singer, and Pelagia says out loud for the first time that she wants to be a doctor. Even though Pelagia and Dr. Ioannis keep making fun of Corelli, Pelagia starts to like him. She looks at him, touches him without thinking, and her anger towards him slowly goes away. Dr. Giannis sees that they are getting close and doesn't know what to do. Mandras joins a communist group called ELAS that wants to take control of Greece after the war is over. He has to beat up a man to get in, and the communist ideas that the boss is Hector tells him about make him very interested. Mandras learns to hate the British and the rich, including Dr. Giannis. A supporter who doesn't believe Hector tells Mandras that Hector's main point is that they'll die if they don't do what he says. Corelli meets Gunther Weber, a young German soldier, and they become friends. Weber doesn't like Jews because he's never met one, and Corelli quickly brings him into La Scala. One day, a flyer shows up on Cephalonia that makes fun of Mussolini and all of the ways he is dishonest and silly. Carlo and Dr. Giannis are delighted, but Corelli is not one of them. Pelagia says that the pamphlet could have been written by Greeks and Italians working together because of the way it is written, but when she sees how her father and Carlo respond to this, she thinks they are stupid. A few days later, Corelli wakes up with a hangover, fights with Pelagia about his part in the war, and starts to write Pelagia's march. Since there isn't much else to eat, Dr. Giannis makes plans for Lamoni to take his family snail hunting. Dr. Giannis and Lamoni leave Corelli and Pelagia alone, and they tell each other they love each other. Corelli has trouble dealing with the fact that the war that brought them together is destroying Greece, which makes Pelagia angry. She tries to cook the snails, but Lamoni stops by, and Corelli realizes that she has found a mine. Corelli and Carlo decide to blow up the mine for safety, even though it is old. The whole village and the Italian soldiers are looking. It kills an engineer and gets sand all over everyone. Corelli and Pelagia kiss, talk about the future, and ride a motorbike around the island as much as they can. Alikos, the goatherd, sees an angel fall from the sky early one morning. Alikos cares for the hurt angel for 2 days before taking it to Dr. Giannis' place. Dr. Giannis finds out that the angel is really Bernières, a British spy who knows ancient Greek. Dr. Giannis gives Pelagia and Corelli advice one after the other. He tells Pelagia that the only way to know if their love is real is to wait to marry Corelli until after the war. He tells Corelli that Pelagia, like all Greeks, has a dark and strange side and warns him not to make plans. When La Scala gets together at Dr. Giannis's house one night, Weber tells some bad jokes and defends his Nazi views. He also says that after the war is over, he will give Pelagia his gramophone. In the weeks that follow, things start to get worse. When the Allies attack Italy, General Gondin, an Italian general in Greece, refuses to give orders that could save his men. Carlo finds out on September 8 that Italy has given up to the Allies. The Germans are asking the Italians to give up, and Weber wants to teach his friends a lesson. Gondin tries to do the right thing, but the German general Barge betrays him and tells his men to attack the Italians. Corelli leads his men into battle, and Stamatis, Corelli'S, and Belisarius go to help. After 3 days, the Italians finally have to give up. Weber tries to say no, but in the end he gives in and agrees to lead the shooting squad that will kill his Italian friends. Corelli lets Weber go, and when the shooting starts, Carlo steps in front of Corelli. Weber lets Corelli live, and that night Corelli and Carlo are found by Belisarius. He takes Corelli to the house of Dr. Giannis, where he and Pelagia do surgery to remove the bullets. They bury Carlo under their olive tree in the morning. As Pelagia and Dr. Giannis care for Corelli, the Germans burn the rest of the bodies. Corelli moves to an empty shack when he is well enough, and Bernières sneaks him off the island. Dr. Giannis gives Corelli permission to marry Pelagia before he leaves, and Pelagia gives him the jacket. When the Germans leave Cephalonia, Weber does what he said he would do and gives the radio to Pelagia. The Greek Civil War begins, and ELAS causes a lot of trouble in Greece. Dr. Giannis, Corelli'S, and Stamatis are sent to prison camps, and Drusilla moves in with Pelagia. Mandras does come back, but he is now big and mean. He tries to rape Pelagia, but first he tries to scare her. He says he read her letters and knows she doesn't love him. He gets shot by Pelagia, and Drusilla throws him out. Mandras jumps into the ocean and drowns himself. Drusilla and Pelagia take in and name a baby girl Antonia. After 2 years, Dr. Giannis comes back, but he doesn't say anything. Carlo's papers are in the hole, and Pelagia finds them and reads them. Soon, people in the town start saying that Pelagia is a witch because she is a doctor. When Pelagia starts to see Corelli'S ghost every year on the date of the massacre and acts like she's Italian, she starts to believe in ghosts. In 1953, a big earthquake destroys everything on the island of Cephalonia. Dr. Giannis dies while trying to save Pelagia and Drusilla, and Pelagia has a hard time getting over her loss for years. She can only feel better when she finishes Dr. Giannis's history for him. As she does this, she starts to talk about politics with Antonia. Because of this, she is not surprised when Antonia marries an older extreme lawyer named Alexei and says she is a communist. To serve the growing number of guests, Drusilla opens a taverna. Antonia gives birth to a boy, Giannis, who is named by Pelagia. Giannis spends most of his time at the taverna, and as he gets older, he wants more and more to be liked by girls. He asks the artist Spiridon to teach him how to play the bouzouki, but Spiridon suggests that Giannis start by learning how to play the mandolin. Pelagia lets them dig up Corelli'S mandolin, and as they do, Belisarios tells them that every year he puts a rose on Carlo's grave. Giannis is very skilled, and when he is 14 years old, Corelli finds him playing at the old house. He finds Pelagia and tells her that he did come back for her, but he thought she was married because he saw her with a baby. She is very angry, but he makes her feel better when he gives her a tape of Pelagia's march. He talks her into riding a motorbike with him again, like when they were younger.
About the author. De Bernières was born near London and grew up in the county of Surrey. Even though he joined the army when he was 18, he was only in the officer training school for 4 months. After that, he went to several universities, including Victoria University of Manchester and the University of London. Before he started writing full-time in the late 1980s, he worked as a plumber and an English teacher in Colombia, among other jobs. His time in Colombia had an effect on his first 3 books, which are called the Latin American Trilogy. He is best known for Captain Corelli'S Mandolin, even though he says he doesn't like the movie version. De Bernières has never been married, but the actor Kathy Gill is the mother of her 2 children. He also plays a number of instruments. He thinks of himself as a passionate beginner, but most of his books show how much he loves music.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.